Good evening. I'm Councillor Julie Hart and I would like to welcome you to this full council meeting. There are no scheduled fire drills tonight, so in the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the main spiral staircase and through the main entrance door. Once outside, please turn left and make your way to the fire assembly point located beyond the multi-storey car park on Exchange Road. If you are unable to use the stairs, please wait in the chamber and you will be guided by a member of staff to the evacuation lift. Due to technical issues, the meeting will not be live streamed, but the recording will be placed on YouTube. You should be aware that the Council is the data controller under the Data Protection Act. Data collected during the webcast will be retained in accordance with the Council's published retention policy. Any members of the public seated in the public gallery may be filmed by the automated camera system and your image may be captured. Therefore, by entering the meeting room, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. Members are reminded to take notice of what is displayed on the screens in the room as these show what is being recorded. It is best that members remain seated when speaking as the cameras are currently set to capture you in a seating position. However, if you do stand, please look at the TV screen to ensure that your head has been captured. Please do not move the microphones too close to you. You can request to speak by pressing the button with the face on it and the microphone will go blue. The order of speakers will be controlled by Democratic Services. The microphones will go green when you are live. We are also going to trial a timer for members' speeches and this will be based on the public speaker desk. Members have received an electronic copy of the relevant paperwork for this meeting. The public agenda for this meeting is available on the Council's website. Thank you. We will now start the agenda. Are there any apologies for absence?
Councillor Jaggard.
Thank you. The Council. Oh, Councillor Crowe, I apologise.
Am I on? Just to add to that, apologies. We've got apologies for absence from Councillor Morris and apologies for lateness from Councillor Ali, who will be joining us later. Thank you.
Councillors' interests notified in advance of the meeting are set out from page 5 in the supplementary agenda order paper. Are there any further interests councillors wish to declare? No? Thank you. The minutes of the last full council meeting held on the 21st of February 2024 are on pages 5 to 23. Are those set of minutes agreed? Thank you. I will now provide you with a mayoral update. On the 24th of February, I was joined by many members of the Ukrainian community, as well as many other residents of Crawley, to commemorate the invasion 2 years ago and to remember the people of the Ukraine. A couple of weeks ago, Crawley was pleased to welcome Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Edinburgh to meet pupils and staff at Manor Green College, in particular children who belong to the charity Super Siblings. This is a charity set up by the parent of the sibling of a special education needs child so that they can all enjoy fun times together. Just last week, amazing though it seems, the rain stopped, the sun shone and the fountains in Queen's Square took centre stage as they were turned on again in front of a very large, very vocal crowd. I believe many shops in the town did a roaring trade in dry children's clothes. Yeah. As you will see from the order paper on page 7, there are Cabinet members' announcements from Councillor Sue Mullins. Councillor Sue Mullins, please introduce your communication.
Thank you very much. If you were walking through the town centre at the weekend, particularly if you happen to walk through the gap that's next to the county mail and it takes you through to Memorial Gardens, you might have seen a rather unusual sight for Crawley. There were trestles, there was a table, there was a paint-bespattered gentleman standing there. There were also umpteen pots of spray paint on the floor, and quite a lot of people were stopping to find out what on earth was going on. In fact, one guy did shout, "You can get arrested for doing that, you know." But what was happening was something that's been in the planning works for some months, and so quite a long time before Christmas, whereas the Creative Crawley, and which is funded by the Arts Council, had come forward with an initiative to put some murals around Crawley. It's been quite a long time in the planning. They've held quite a lot of workshops around the town, Bewbush, Broadfield, Langley Green, where members from all over, residents from all over Crawley were invited to come along and give their ideas about what they would like to see in their different areas, not just in the town centre, but around the wards as well. To talk about Crawley, to talk about what Crawley meant to them and what they would like to see perhaps immortalised on a wall somewhere in their area or within the town centre. This funding for this came from a small amount of money that was put aside from 106 money, which has been ring-fenced, which was particularly for art projects within the town, and the rest of it was provided by Creative Crawley, which of course is funded by the Arts Council. The council itself had very little input as to what would happen, but we did see the final plans and we were able to make quite strong comments about some of the ideas that had come forward, and the people who were involved did listen to us and take on board our comments. The town centre, if you look at it, the one that's in the town centre, are two beautiful pictures of a young child and a young woman. A young child on one side and a young woman on the other. Really vibrant and beautiful. And if you look closely, there's actually some gold leaf within the designs. Apparently that particular artist, that's his calling card. He always has a little bit of gold leaf somewhere in his murals. Now, when this first went out to tender, apparently over 130 artists from all over the world, not just all over the UK, came forward saying they would like to paint something for posterity in Crawley. I think that's quite something, that a town like Crawley has that much pull, that 130 professional artists were only too keen to come to Crawley and paint something for us that would represent how we feel about Crawley. Also, if you've been out at the weekend and you happen to drive past or walk past Kingsgate Car Park, you might have noticed that the top of the tower had changed a beautiful colour of sky blue. And if you'd gone back on the Sunday, you'd have seen the beginnings of a beautiful bare-limbed tree come into view. And as far as I know, if it's on its way to being finished, if the rains allowed it to happen, it's now got a lovely picture at the bottom of a young mum with a child just leaning over a child. Really beautiful pictures. Now, there are other ones planned, the tunnels underneath the Bewbush underpass. There's something quite, what would I say, a bit more modernistic, maybe, in style, but maybe more appropriate for that sort of area. And then there are other ones planned for around the town. We know that one is definitely going on the Crawley Hospital. Crawley Hospital are very pleased with their design, apparently. And there's other ones being considered for other areas of the town, which will come forward in the future when the people who are organising all this are happy that we are happy and that they're happy. But the problem we have with this is that beauty is always in the eye of the beholder, and what makes me happy maybe might not make you happy, or might not make her happy or him happy, because as we say, art is just what hits you in the heart. The two I've seen at the moment hit me in the heart, and I think they're a great asset to Crawley, and they make Crawley that little bit more special, a little bit more vibrant, and something for people to talk about, and maybe something to cheer people up. So all power to the new artists that will be coming on board to provide things in the future.
Thank you. We will now move to item 5, public question time, which is set for 30 minutes. I will briefly explain the procedure. I will invite each person in turn to the table at the front of the public seating area to ask their question. Please state your name, which ward you live in, and then ask your question. Please remember that questions cannot repeat any question that has already been asked tonight or within the last 6 months. I will then invite the most appropriate councillor to reply to your question. You may then ask one supplementary question which should relate to your original question or the response given to it. Do we have anybody that wants to ask a question? Would you like to come forward? Thank you.
Robin Burnham Bewbush. The council has recently declared a housing crisis. Crisis actually has been going on for many years. But therefore, is it not the case that any idea to resolve or alleviate the housing crisis should be supported and implemented?
Just came forward to increase our housing stock, but we have to wait for those measures to come forward. But if someone's got a viable proposition, then we will always consider it, and if it's good enough, then we will work with them. That's it, really.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Burnham?
As everyone in this room already knows, in July 2022, I presented a petition, Stop Affordable Housing, borrow money to build council houses at council rents using housing cooperatives. Unfortunately, the council, we don't have to name the councillors because they know who they are, did not vote for this. I am pleased to know that since then, I haven't given up on this petition, and I've asked both the leader of the Labour group and the Tory group to meet with me to try and get this petition actually put forward and voted on. Duncan, I will tell you, if you allow me, have the decency to allow me to finish. Please have the decency to do it. Councillor Duncan Crowe did have the decency to speak with me, and between us we have agreed basically for my petition to be put to this council, and you will be voting on it through Duncan Crowe's motion today. And my question is, I hope every one of you supports this.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? No? Okay. Thank you. We will now deal with agenda item 6, consideration of full council recommendations and call-in decisions. There are 2 recommendations under this item from the committee before the council this evening. The first recommendation comes from the Governments Committee held on a meeting on the 5th of March 2024. Recommendation 1, review of the Constitution starting on page 25. Councillor Lamb, please introduce this recommendation from Governance Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. As part of their rolling processes of going through the Constitution in order to make sure it remains contemporary, make sure it remains in line with legislation, and make sure it makes sense and is in the simplest format as possible, Democratic Service officers have pulled up a number of areas where it makes sense to amend the existing procedures. These are mostly surrounding the work of the Licensing Committee. They're all set out in the agenda pack, and it was unanimously supported by the Governance Committee in line with the general principle of trying to make sure that the Constitution remains transparent and accessible. I beg to move.
Councillor Crowe, I believe you are seconding the recommendation, and in doing so, please confirm if you are wanting to reserve your right to speak later during the debate.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So I formally second the recommendation, and I will speak now. Just as an aside, I see we've got a new counting down clock. Oh, it's only come on for me. It didn't seem to come on for anybody else. But I was just going to say why, as well as the webcasting not working and being live, neither was the countdown clock. It wasn't you working for Councillor Mullins or for Councillor Lamb, but suddenly I get up and hey ho, I'm on the timer. But I guess that's just how it goes sometimes. Yeah, Councillor Lamb was correct that this was unanimously supported at the governance committee. We did have a bit of a discussion and asked a few questions. I think what is proposed is sensible in terms of the consistency around the guillotine, both within and in the perhaps unlikely scenario now that we do end up having to meet outside the town hall. We did also have a bit of discussion, perhaps I'll admit it was mainly me, around the various ways to move a no confidence vote in the leader, and this having this recommendation here, the third part of it does enable it to happen at the annual council meeting, whereas previously, and I speak as someone who's moved at least once against the former leader and at least once against the former mayor. In the end, I didn't get to move it. There are other options as well, but it took for when a no confidence motion can be raised, such as it can be done at a full council meeting. I'm not going to move on tonight. Councillor Jones will be pleased to hear, but there are other options as well, such as an emergency or an extraordinary full council meeting can be called if enough members signal to the head of Legal and Democratic Services should they require one. But this was an omission, not having it sort of available or easily available for annual council. So it is right to rectify it, and we will be supporting recommendation 1. Thank you.
I will now open up the debate to the floor. Are there any speakers? Okay, Councillor Lamb, do you wish to use your right to reply, and in doing so, please formally move the recommendation?
I formally move the recommendation.
Thank you. I will call for a vote on recommendation 1, starting on page 25. Is that agreed, or would you like a vote on it? Agreed. Thank you. We will consider the final recommendation 2, second home council tax premium, detailed on page 68. Councillor Jones, please introduce the recommendation from Cabinet.
Thank you, Madam. Double council tax premium a year sooner than they're currently required to, from April 2025, which is the earliest time that the legislation permits us to do this. Currently, these empty homes are subject to 100% premium after 2 years. This is not an academic exercise. There are 35 long-term empty properties in Crawley. 26 have been unoccupied for between 2 and 5 years, 5 between 5 and 10 years, and 4 properties have been empty for more than 10 years, which is pretty extraordinary. Madam Mayor, we're also recommending that second homeowners should have to pay twice as much council tax from April 2025. 100% premium would apply on properties that are not a main residence and are substantially furnished. The most up-to-date figures I have are that there are currently 331 second homes in Crawley. There will be several exemptions to the tightening of the rules. These include empty properties that are uninhabitable due to extensive renovation, as well as those where planning restrictions mean that they're not available for year-round use. I think the latter really is mainly to address owners in caravan parks, for example, which aren't really a consideration in this borough, but will be elsewhere. Inherited homes will also be exempt for up to a year to prevent families who are grieving from having to pay. The wider aim of the report is to reduce the number of empty homes and to encourage the use of properties as main residences rather than as second homes in the borough, and so help in boosting the supply of properties in the town. However, if they don't let or sell any empty properties they own, they'll be making a greater contribution to help pay for local services. As I said at Cabinet previously, it is my heartfelt view that at a time many people can't afford even one, those who are fortunate enough to be able to afford more than one house should make a higher contribution. It is the case that aside from the relatively modest amount that it will raise Crawley Borough Council, we think the sum will be around £70,000 for us, that given how much more of the council tax share West Sussex County Council receives, nearly 8 times as much. They will get over £500,000 from the borough from this additional income thanks to the decision made by this council tonight. Now, this is not an inconsiderable amount of money and quite the windfall for the county council. Through no additional work or effort required for themselves, we will have done it all for them tonight. And as we've done them such a favour, I would like to make a suggestion with what they could do with this money in the spirit of cooperation. I believe, Madam Mayor, that this additional money that West Sussex County Council will get should be spent on what they are responsible for, that residents consider the highest priority. And the one thing quite overwhelmingly, whenever I read residents' comments on social media, is that they want the County Council to properly address the dreadful state of the roads in Crawley and across the country. It is for that reason that should this council agree this additional amount tonight, I intend to write a letter to the leader of the County Council, Paul Marshall, to urge him to arrange for all such additional funds derived from the boroughs and districts in this new way to be put towards a ring-fenced fund for potholes repair and road resurfacing to increase the capacity for repairs and to address the manifest deficiencies in road maintenance in Crawley over a sustained period now. With other boroughs and districts in West Sussex having significantly higher numbers of second homes, this should mean many millions of pounds extra available for the County Council to spend on this within the next few years. I estimate a minimum of 10 million, but it's probably a lot more than that, and they should plan ahead knowing they will be getting this money, so there is a medium and long-term solution to the state of some of the local roads, which sadly we have suffered from for too long here in Crawley. The important thing tonight, however, Madam Mayor, is for the Council to agree to the proposed premiums so that we have the opportunity to derive the benefits I've talked about above from doing so. Other boroughs and councils in West Sussex have done so or are in the process of doing so, and I wholeheartedly recommend this to the Council. Thank you.
Councillor Irvine, I believe you're seconding the recommendation, and in doing so, please confirm if you are wishing to speak, to reserve your right to speak later during the debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not that there's much more to add to what Councillor Jones has said. From my point of view as Cabinet Member for Housing, anything which might bring even a few houses back into use in Crawley to be used as homes is going to be a good thing. But what strikes me about this is that I've noticed that up and down the country, no council has turned down this proposition. I don't think there's a single councillor anywhere that's voted against it. It's obviously very popular. So it rather begs the question, why has it taken so long for it to come forward? But anyway, I completely support the recommendation. We have the support of the OSC. I can't imagine that any councillor would want to vote against this, so I urge you to support it.
Thank you. I will now open up the debate to the floor. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will stay on topic. Honestly, Councillor Jones, you're trying to turn this into a debate about something else. How quite utterly ridiculous. I spoke in support of this recommendation. I see it's labelled as recommendation 1 in the papers. It is recommendation 2, isn't it, for tonight? I spoke in support of this Cabinet, and I'm grateful that government legislation has enabled this council and indeed other councils to enact this. This is not about, as I see it, raising income, and we will wait and see if the sums quoted in the report materialise as to how much extra is raised. I suspect it will be less than that. What this is really about, and what this is right, is about trying to maximise the use of housing and making sure that we haven't got any, that people are incentivised not to keep properties empty. As I understand it, this relates to second homes that are empty, as I understand it, because I presume it doesn't account for those because clearly there are lots of people who have second homes and who rent them out. So I don't believe this accounts. This affects them. Otherwise, we'd have a lot of members, especially on the opposite benches, having to declare lots of interest, as we have some members who own 2, 3, 4, or even more properties in addition to their to their own. But we will be supporting this. It is the right thing to do to incentivise people to maximise the use of the housing that we have here in Crawley. And I don't feel the need to try to talk about any other subject in relation to it. That really is quite a low blow. Thank you very much.
Councillor Burgess.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well done. I like it. However, I did remember trying to bring it forward myself when I was in your position, Councillor Irvine, but it failed when I tried. So well done on this. However, I do have a little question because I'm quite naive about exactly what we're going to do regarding if an elderly person has to move into sheltered accommodation for a while and has their home left empty. Are they liable, or is there some special dispensation for elderly who perhaps have to go into a home for a while before they go back home or before the house is sold? I know you've got a year's wait before anything's done, but there's a little bit of a grey area for me here. So could you just clarify what happens in that respect? Thank you.
Excuse me. As there are no further speakers, Councillor Jones, do you wish to use your right to reply? And in doing so, please formally move the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I thank the councillors for their contributions. Yes, the intention of this is to maximise housing usage in the borough, but we've already seen from some of the figures that I quoted that there are a hardcore of owners who even with double premiums after 2 years are holding on to empty homes for in excess of a decade or maybe not as long as that, but certainly still a long time. So clearly some people will get rid of their empty or second homes, but by no means all. And we are talking about how we spend the money that this council will be collecting from our residents. So it's not an irrelevant topic, and I don't think it's even unfair to raise it. From your description, Councillor Burgess, I don't think it would be a second home if a resident goes in for respite. Essentially, as with anything that has any sort of complication, there will be details in terms of what when it applies, when it starts to apply, how long, when there's an overlap. But clearly, if anyone's in any doubt, they need to consult our council tax officers to get definitive advice on their circumstances. I suppose the only other thing I'd say is this is probably the third, fourth full council in a row where the leader of the opposition has made remarks about my members' personal interests, and quite honestly, I think it's rather ungracious, really, particularly as I don't try and single out any of his members, and I'd discourage my other members from doing so as well. I think it's quite mean-spirited. But saying that, let's try and stay positive. Yes, this hopefully will address some of the issues about freeing up council housing stock, and help us with our housing emergency. But saying that, actually, there is probably an opportunity where people rightly pay more council tax if they choose to keep a second home or a holiday home, or they want to keep a home empty if it's for a long time. So I look forward to the opportunities, and as I said, I will be very vigorously taking this up with my counterpart at West Sussex. Thank you. And I formally move.
Is that agreed, or would you like a vote on it? Thank you. Notice. We will now deal with the notice of motion before us this evening, which is set out on page 71 of the agenda. Notice of motion 1, supply and affordability of social housing. This motion will be moved by Councillor Crowe and seconded by Councillor Miller-Smith. I therefore call upon Councillor Crowe to formally move the motion and present the motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. My motion sets out a timeline of events in relation to housing and full council meetings, and who knows, maybe a future motion might reference this one that I'm proposing tonight. I'll start by taking us back to July 2022, which was 20 months ago. The world was still in COVID recovery and inflation was soaring but hadn't yet peaked. We were also only 4 months or so into the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And with regard to this council, Councillor Jones had just become leader a couple of months previously, and we're also on about 5 months or so from the statement by Natural England that brought in the water neutrality restrictions. And with housing, looking back from where we are now, I'd say that in July 2022, we were probably in the very early days of what has become our current temporary accommodation crisis, where we have around 500 households consisting of around 1,100 people and growing, having to be put into temporary accommodation by this council. In July 2022, we heard a petition submitted by Mr. Robin Burnham. And I'll try not to sound like a captain hindsight, but I do think that looking back, that this council was far too dismissive of Mr. Burnham's petition. And I do recall it took a lot of effort from myself to get that councillors be provided with more information from officers to be added to the noting of the petition that Councillor Jones had tabled. The petition raised the important issue of affordability of new housing and the supply of new housing. Both of these issues have got exponentially more acute since July 2022, and subsequently at our last full council meeting, just 5 weeks ago, a housing emergency was declared and unanimously voted by all members present. Now, in some ways, it's very easy to declare a housing emergency, but what's not so easy is actually trying to address the issues that it raised. Now, I want to make it very clear, I'm not presenting this motion with any intention to be critical of anyone or to apportion any blame. I am genuinely proposing this motion to offer unity in trying to address as best we can an issue for its size and scale that is threatening to overwhelm everything that this council does. Until the numbers of people in temporary accommodation and the associated costs start to steadily go back down, this issue and those issues either contributing to it or emanating from it ought to be our main focus at full council meetings as well as behind the scenes. And given the seriousness of these issues and the impact they have on this council, and that's not to mention the human cost, we really should be putting petty politics aside and working together. And turning to what I'm proposing tonight, the first resolution is to make absolutely clear that no stone will be left unturned and that all credible options will be explored in the delivery of social housing, and the speed of delivery will absolutely be a top priority for this council. Now, I don't doubt this isn't the case, but let's get all member buy-in and publicly say it loud and clear at this full council meeting. I've used the term renewed vigour in the motion, and I believe that our officers will have that if they can see in public that we all back them wholeheartedly in their efforts to bring forward more social housing. The second resolution is about the water neutrality issue that's severely hampering delivery of new housing of all tenures in Crawley and also in Horsham and Chichester districts. The lack of new supply in both private and social housing in the wider area is having an impact on the housing market and ultimately increasing the demand for social housing. Again, it's a complex issue and this council has lobbied jointly with Horsham and Chichester, but we haven't had a great deal of discussion about it here at full council. And I know officers have come up with the innovative method of water retrofitting programme to help with the delivery of new social housing, but that doesn't help with the delivery of new private housing, and that is part of the picture. The lack of supply, especially of private rented properties, has reduced the number of available properties to rent, and that has pushed up the rents, meaning that we see greater demand for social housing. And we all want to see lobbying on this intensify, but again, we're offering our support, especially when it comes to lobbying our own government. The third resolution is about the affordability of new social homes that are let at affordable rents, which, as the written question submitted by Mr Burnham at our last meeting revealed, tend to be in Crawley towards the upper end of the 50 to 80% range of market rents, which themselves, of course, have shot up hugely over the last couple of years. Again, no blame is being levied, but the request is to see how other local authorities have been able to provide new social housing at 50% of market rents. Why wouldn't we seek to learn from others? Factors elsewhere may be different, not apply to Crawley, but let's have an open mind and look at how what others do and see what we can learn. The fourth resolution is about getting more member involvement in the monitoring the supply of new social housing. I think it was good that scrutiny looked at homelessness at their last meeting, but let's have a meeting. Thank you. But let's look at what works well and what hasn't worked so well in the delivery of new housing, so that we can make progress on some of the issues that are a barrier to the provision of new social housing. In the housing emergency motion, it was stated how many new social homes have come forward over a period of years. But I expect most members here wouldn't be able to recite what has come forward at what site in what year. Let's look at this every year, look back, see what's worked well and what hasn't worked well. This isn't about a blame game, it's about how we can best work together to maximise the delivery of new social housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miller-Smith, please second the motion and confirm if you are wishing to reserve your right to speak later during the debate.
Thank you very much. Yes, I would like to second this motion, and I would like to reserve my right to speak later in the debate. Thank you.
We have an amendment on the notice of motion. This is detailed on page 11 of the supplementary agenda. Councillor Jones, please introduce your amendment along with your verbal amendment you are raising for accuracy purposes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a strangely worded motion put forward tonight by the opposition that mostly goes over old ground and almost seems designed to humour, some might say patronise the lead petitioner of the formal petition, rather than do anything useful to add to the work being done to address the housing emergency. Usually in a motion, we would expect the councillors submitting it to express within it what they actually think. I can't remember ever hearing the Conservative group ever express concern or opposition themselves to the setting of affordable rates or rent for any of our stock. Even in this motion, they aren't saying they have a problem with it. They just quote wording from a petition that does. Well, if the Conservatives group are saying they have a problem with it, it would be helpful if they could say so. I don't think they will, because they know the drawbacks of never applying it, but I am prepared to be corrected on this point. And as the opposition are resurrecting old arguments, let's just remind ourselves of the basics. There are currently 346 properties let at affordable rent. This equates to around 4% of our current stock of 8,257 properties. This remains broadly the same tiny fraction of the overall stock as it was less than 2 years ago, despite the council having 180 more homes in its estate than it did back when it was last discussed. The council's policy is to set rents at social rent levels 50% of market rates wherever possible. Where we do not, it is where higher rent levels are required, either as a condition of funding grants from the government or where it could not go ahead at all without securing those slightly higher rents. The council ensures the affordability of a property for any new tenancy, so only those who can afford a higher rent are provided with those properties. Decreasing income would have longer term implications for the council's housing stock. We've made some amendments, Madam Mayor, because the opposition's motion is highly slanted and tries to present something that isn't the full picture as to why we are in the position we are. Saying the council only delivered 37 new council homes in 2023 is using highly selective figures, and the Conservatives purposely have chosen the worst figures, knowing that water neutrality restrictions imposed by Natural England held up some of this Labour administration's plans to deliver an extensive programme of council housing. It ignores that we are now in a position to start bringing more council homes forward over the next 2 years and will amount to around 500 new homes. We will certainly not rest on our laurels, and we will look to add to that where it is suitable to do so. It also ignores that so much that has stopped this so far is down to the government's policies. Things like the restrictions on use of one-to-one receipts from Right to Buy, the increased discounts on Right to Buy introduced by Cameron and Osborne, which saw a further large decrease in the council's stock following their introduction. We're also taking out the reference to Kensington and Chelsea as we consider it provocative. We will not be taking lessons on best practice on council housing from the local authority that presided over the Grenfell Tower tragedy. While we will also always look and listen to good practice elsewhere, we remain one of the leading local authorities for our size for bringing forward new council housing. To address the substantive points made in the motion, Madam Mayor, the challenge to development has been the impact on development caused by the water neutrality planning restrictions. As a result of the pioneering work by this council to generate water credits and to work with other affected local authorities to put in place the water neutrality strategy, we have a way through to development for those affected by water neutrality for at least 500 council and affordable homes that otherwise would not be possible. The motion talks about using housing cooperatives, which we have no problem with in principle, but is engaging in theoretical politics politics rather than reality. I think no such body other than this council currently is remotely likely anytime soon to have the water neutrality credits required to get around water neutrality. So in that respect, we are the only show in town. As for lobbying on water neutrality, we have already been doing this without the need for a prompt. Following the declaration of a housing emergency at the last council meeting, a letter was sent to ministers across 6 separate government departments. This included a specific ask in relation to water neutrality. The imposition of water neutrality is a failure of a long-term regional and national infrastructure planning, and that the sanctions applied through the local planning system penalise local communities, putting at risk future housing and growth. As such, government departments must be much more proactive in resolving an issue that we are currently being told may not be resolved until 2040. Alongside this, CBC is working with our colleagues in Horsham and Chichester to arrange a ministerial meeting on this matter. This had been scheduled to take place but was cancelled at fairly late notice at the Minister's request and is currently being rearranged. The local authorities affected are putting a series of asks together to ensure that the relevant government departments are focused on seeking help to resolve this issue. The Chief Executive of Southern Water is also due to meet with myself and the Chief Executive over the coming weeks. So we can only support the motion with this amendment made, Madam Mayor, and I will formally move it. A procedural point, Madam Mayor. I will be making a slight change to the wording of the motion following a point made by the Conservative group by replacing the words "a government department" to say instead "Natural England, a non-departmental public body sponsored by DEFRA," which of course is a hugely different thing. Thank you very much.
Councillor Miller-Smith. I do apologise. Councillor Irvine, I'm sorry, I believe you're seconding.
Yeah.
In doing so, please confirm if you are wishing to reserve your right to speak later during the debate.
I'd rather get it over with now. In the spirit of what we're discussing tonight, I don't intend to be horrible about the Conservatives' motion. And I must say, after many, many years in local politics, somehow, given the origins of the petition and the mover of the motion, I somehow seem to be put on the centre ground. First time in my political life, but But looking at the motion, and I had to write some of this down because I don't know about you, but I go home at night after a council meeting sometimes and I lie in bed and I think, crikey, I've got to say that. I never say, God, I'm glad I didn't say that, but anyway. But looking at the motion, I noticed that there are a lot of things mentioned in it which we have been doing and are doing and will continue to do in housing. And how do I know this? I know this because every month at my portfolio briefing, papers are presented to me and discussed which show the progress made and future plans in our housing operation. So I'm a little bit surprised that we seem to be criticised for achieving, quotation marks, only 37 new council houses last year, even though that is still 37 more than most councils. In fact, a few years ago, I went with Councillor Bunnings and Councillor Jacob to Bromley Borough Council, massive council stretching from the inner London to the outskirts of Kent, to see their modular housing programme. And that was the first council housing they had built in 40 years. So, we're still doing a lot more than most other councils, even though I agree it is not enough. But each month I'm advised of the difficulties facing us in pursuing our building programme, water neutrality, as Councillor Jones and Councillor Crowes mentioned, planning constraints and so on. And while I don't have any idea what gets discussed at the shadow portfolio holders briefings, the figures I receive wouldn't be any different from the figures supplied to my shadow, who has seconded the motion, and they should therefore be fully aware of the hurdles that we have to overcome. Selecting that figure seems to me slightly underhanded way of trying to undermine what this council has achieved and what it seeks to achieve in the future. Turning now to the subject of housing cooperatives, of course, we will work with them and any other housing providers who approach us with suitable proposals. But I have to say that I do not know of a single instance where a housing cooperative has approached us, and I don't know of the existence of one in or near Crawley. But, you know, as I said before, when it comes to providing housing, we will rule nothing out. I'm sorry to go over this again, but I find that mentioning Kensington and Chelsea Council in the context of seeking advice, either insensitive or provocative, probably both, the view of that terrible, terrible tragedy at Grenfell Tower. We won't be contacting them for advice. We will also happily advise other councils on how to change temporary tenancies into lifetime secure tenancies, an ongoing project of this council, this Labour council. Finally, Madam Mayor, may I make a confession? My confession is that I am very proud of this council's housing record. A tremendous amount of work goes into it, and it's never easy, what with constant cost pressures and a government which seems indifferent to the need for social housing. There's been talk about the affordable rents, as Councillor Jones has pointed out. The affordable rents part of our operation is a very small amount, and that money gets recycled back into our housing revenue account to provide further homes and to pay for repairs and so on and so forth. And I do think, overall, that when you consider a council tenancy, now it is a tenancy for life, thanks to us. You don't have to pay builders insurance, you don't have to pay for your arrears, you do have to pay for your arrears, obviously. You don't have to pay for your repairs, and there's so much else that makes it, in my view, good value for money. And, you know, if I had the choice, again in my life, I would probably choose to be a council tenant. So I support the amendment, and I urge all councillors to support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now open up the debate to the floor. Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to remind us of some of the content of Councillor Crow's speech. I mean, he used the word unity, and this is genuinely a notice of motion that is designed to foster political unity, not just from the point of view of making it clear to our officer team that we're all pursuing the same objective, but also because the lobbying of organisations that can improve housing delivery, the lobbying is much more effective if it's seen to be on a proper cross-party basis. And I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Jones, the alteration to his amendment where he correctly identifies that in fact Natural England is not a government department. So the purpose of this notice of motion is to really further inspire us to pursue all avenues to achieve a greater delivery of social housing, and also beyond that to make housing more affordable generally, including in the private sector. We have quite a weak private sector within Crawley, and it must be said that the prolonged freezing of the local housing allowance has not assisted with that particular situation. Now, I think Councillor Jones in his remark suggested that we might have been trying to patronise the petitioner. I don't think we'd get very far with this petitioner if we tried that, honestly. We do acknowledge, and I've acknowledged at the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, the delivery of housing by this council overall over the last several years. So in that vein, I feel that I kind of lobbed you a sort of compliment grenade, and I think Councillor Crow did as well in his speech. The trouble is you seem to think it's okay to throw back a real one, and it's not. It's better that you don't. It's better that we stick together on this particular agenda. So we're not being critical. We acknowledge as well the excellent innovative work done on water neutrality and combating that directive. But we really need, there's always more, as per this notice of motion, that we can do with lobbying. It's not just government, is it? It's other influences like the local government association and other housing interest groups who it's right to lobby as well. And the last part of our recommendation, of course, seeks to involve backbench members somewhat continuously in scrutinising the progress of our housing delivery, whether it be through private rented or social housing or through housing associations. And it is important that we receive updates on this most critical issue to the Overview and Scrutiny Commission on a regular basis. And of course, there's the wider impact as well. I mean, we're pushing towards a point where homelessness will be taking up 1/3 of the council's revenue budget, and that's clearly an unsustainable position, and it's one that we should be seeking to reverse. So I'd urge you to see the notice of motion that we tabled in the spirit that it's meant. It's meant to support the enhanced delivery, to deal with the acknowledged housing crisis, and there's no other motive behind it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sue Mullins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nearly got it right, Madam Mayor. The words fail me. They don't fail me very often, but to actually, it's almost like you've just seen the light on the other side of the chamber. I find it quite amazing. Anyway, and if you're a resident of Crawley, you should have the right to buy a house in Crawley at a reasonable amount to pay back on your mortgage, not a 40-year mortgage, not a mortgage that's so crippling that every member of the household needs to be in a full-time, well-paid job in order to pay back that mortgage. You should have the right, if you don't want to buy, you should have the right to rent on the private market, but not at what is now the average rent now for the average renter is 33% of their income. And that's an average. If you look at some of the more crowded areas in the southeast, like Crawley, you may be looking at 52% of your income. 52% of your income paid out on rent. And if you can't manage to get on the housing ladder and buy a house, or you can't get on the housing ladder and rent privately, then you should be able to approach your local council and ask for social housing. If your income is at such, or your circumstances are such, then you should be able to approach the local council and ask them for housing. You should not expect to have to sit on a waiting list for years and years with no prospect of ever moving further up. And you most certainly should not expect to languish in temporary housing for months, weeks, years, with absolutely no idea when your misery is actually going to come to an end. Therefore, it shocks me to the core to hear people on that side of the, well, I'm sure there's going to be more than one person on that side of the chamber suddenly eulogising social housing when you never have done in the past. Just for interest, I had looked up a few things on the computer today. You've had the right to buy your council home since 1936 in this country. Not many people exercise that right because they couldn't afford the mortgage repayments. In fact, I remember an uncle of mine saying, I wish I could have a council house because it would be a lot easier than actually having a mortgage because he struggled to pay for one. But when Margaret Thatcher came in and suddenly there was a massive push for let's get everybody a homeowner. And it did appeal to a lot of people. Why shouldn't it? It's a lovely ambition to be able to own your own home, but not at the expense of everybody else, the people who really need homes, no longer being able to have them. The whole point of selling council houses was if you were going to sell them, you would replace them one for one, like for like. But of course that never ever happened. And when the big supply of people buying their houses dried up, the Tory government brought in even bigger discounts to try and get that moving again. And it wasn't because they were hoping everybody would be nice and happy living in their nice mortgaged house. They just wanted to change the way of people voting. And that's all it was all about. It's now we've got to the stage where we have £9.3 billion being paid in housing benefit to private landlords in this country. Those private landlords overall are the private landlords who manage to buy council houses and let them out. They've been bought up by the shed load. How many council homes do you think that were in Crawley are now in private hands and rented out at exorbitant rents to people in Crawley who just plain can't afford them? And because that's happened, our housing stock has dwindled to 8,000 houses. It's not enough to supply the amount of people in Crawley who desperately need good homes. You know, there's also 106,000 households over the whole UK living in temporary accommodation. This problem isn't just in Crawley, it's everywhere. And there's a reason for it. The reason for it was to push away from what was good social housing, thank you, Madam Mayor, to push people onto waiting lists and into misery. This has not happened overnight. It's not suddenly occurred to you, I hope, over there, that that's just the way it is now. That's how it's been worked on for years and years. And I'm afraid your government started it, and your government has enthusiastically carried it out to the misery of our Crawley residents and residents all over the country.
Councillor Chariton.
Thank you. It's interesting, but I've only attended a few, the good fortune, if that's the right term, to have attended only a few council meetings so far, because I'm fairly a new councillor. But what's interesting is whenever we have basically a highly contentious motion, the opposition always claim, oh, it's not what it seems. It's for unity. It's to enhance. It's to support you, which is odd in this case, because then why phrase it in such a contentious way and with highly selective figures? It's, at least, if you've got a petition, and you're taking a look at the figures, you might want to ask a few more questions about what lies behind those figures and what those figures truly represent, particularly since the opposition there often claim that they're so data-driven, they're so interested in facts, and yet they seem to ignore large chunks of facts in order to present a highly slanted and really underneath it, very contentious motion here. And it's like, who are you fooling? We can see right through it, and I think the general public can too. Stop it. If you're going to present a motion of a contentious motion, be bold, be brave, be your opposition, and present it as a contentious motion, not some sort of mollified, covered over, buried. Of course it is, Duncan. You know it is. I know it is. Well, none of us here are stupid. We weren't born yesterday. All right. So that's basically what I wanted to say, because it gets a bit tiresome, I have to say. And it's, as I say, it's fooling no one. Thank you.
Councillor Burgess.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't going to speak, but I will. Oh dear, we're here again, aren't we? Pointing fingers at us. And yet time and time again I tell you that we're all here to represent the people of Crawley, and yet all you can do is throw stuff at us, which frankly you should look at yourselves. You've put up the council rents time and time again. You've left your people in poverty. You've got 4% 4% higher charging. Why are all the people, can't they pay the same rates? Why can't they pay the same rent? Why do you keep putting up the council tax, council rent? And while I go on about it, can we just say that I think you'll find a Labour MP was involved in Grenfell as well. And while we have people shouting at us across the chamber, such as Councillor Mullins, who I get frankly sick and tired of the way she speaks across at us as if we're nothing. Well, we are. We're here to represent our people. This is a motion that we've put together because I've pushed and talked about the state of our residents and what they have to put up with. And can I remind you on that side that it was this side, although we agree with aspirational housing, it can be in the form of apartments and flats. And we're actually the first to rebuild and build council properties in this area. And can I also remind you that no one put a gun to your head to buy your council house. I'm a Conservative, and I did not buy my council house because I could see the problems it would bring in the future. And you couldn't? Are you that short-sighted? Our residents here are struggling. You women, the women over your side will stand and claim lots of lovely stuff and get people in. The people are suffering because of their rents going up. because some of them have to pay more than others, because there isn't a level playing field, because you don't look at other authorities that charge 50% of market rent, whatever that ethereal figure is. And you have the audacity to point your finger at us. You want me to be a bit more of opposition? I will, because I'm looking across at you all now, and you're hypocrites. You sit there and you don't think about your people, and you call yourself social, and you call yourself the People's Party. How dare you? I too can shout at Councillor Mullins, and so can you all. This motion comes from our heart. OK, we sit here all nice and polite. We're Conservatives. That's right. We don't have an ulterior motive on this side. I don't. No, you can look like that, Chariton. You might have an ulterior motive. I don't. So there we go. If you can't see your people needing help, then I'm sorry. I'm ashamed of you.
Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you, Chair. Quite passionate speeches have been made on this topic. Just I think I want to reiterate one of the facts Councillor Jones earlier said. It's only 4% of our stock is on affordable rents. Is that right, Councillor Jones? And which means 96% of our stock is still on social rents, which is quite an achievement for the council of our size. We are one town of our size. We are one of the council which has the biggest housing stocks in the region, which is an amazing achievement, and we should be proud of that. We're still providing that social housing. I know there is selective figures have been used in the motion. I just want to substantiate the number of 500 new council homes which we're going to do built in the next few years. Just a little bit detail, just for the peace of mind, as you guys are so aware of that. Longley House, 121 units, building commencing in early 2025. Forgewood, Phase 1B, 33 units, delivered early 2025. Forgewood, Phase 4B, 121 units, plus 47 homes at discounted sale. Breezerhurst, Phase 2, 84 units. Ambulance Station, 39 units. Deerswood Court, Modular, 15 units. St. Catherine Hospice, Extra Care, 80 affordable units. That's not even include what's coming forward at Telford Place, which will be a further 291 to 293 in total, including older people's shared ownership and first-time buyer starter homes, with the council due to receive 95 to 97 rental units. And I haven't counted those because they are not within the 2 years, because they're going to deliver it in 2027. As for the Conservative group, claiming the supply and affordability of social housing is important to them, I may need to a little more convincing than they have managed tonight. Given that 3 out of 4 planning committee members voted against the Telford Place, which we're talking about 291 affordable homes. 3 out of 4 voted against it. That tells you something, the hypocrisy actually, councillors, and it's not this side, it's the other side. Also, just to share a little bit more water neutrality side of things as well, as far as water neutrality is concerned, we have been talking about it a long time. And we know we are here in no small part due to the failed outcome of water privatisation that have seen the lack of investment in the infrastructure and decommissioning of reservoirs such as Weirwood to maximise shareholders' dividends. We also know that we are here because of the inept way of Conservative government imposed this on Borough at a short notice and have done next to nothing to help resolve the position. We as Crawley Borough Council come up with the innovative way to resolve the issue for us, or compel the utility companies to act in the interest of the people they serve. In moving this forward, it is utterly dumbfounding and more than a little dismaying how ineffective the government has been throughout all of this, and it is a terrible tribute to this council and its officer that we have made us as much as progress as we have. I think we should be proud of that, what we achieved in this short space of time, in the difficult times. And this passionate speech, as I mentioned, 3 out of 4 members voted against it. We wanted affordable homes, we do. But they didn't want it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ali, good evening. I just need to ask you if you have any interest to declare.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Please accept my apologies. I was held another public event. I don't have any interest to declare, and I haven't lobbied on anything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chris Mullins.
Thank you, Mayor. I was somewhat bemused when I saw the motion, because going back many years like I do, we've always understood the differences between home ownership and council houses and private renting. But it's never been like it is now. It's never been as bad as it is now. This last 14 years of Conservative rule has seen the development of the worst housing crisis that this country's ever seen. And I just think to myself, what on earth has been going on in all those years if people really at government level cared about ordinary people in this country? Why haven't they done so much more than what they did? When we were selling council houses, and I've got to say that Margaret Thatcher's plan to sell council houses was very popular. The discounts were massive, the houses were very cheap, and a lot of the times the mortgage came out cheaper probably at the time than the rent. But they, of course, the new house owners had to take on maintenance, repairs and insurance and stuff that they hadn't perhaps all accounted for. Some of them took on leases, which are an absolute nightmare. And a lot of my work at the moment is dealing with people who've got leases and people who are getting charged exorbitant rents from private landlords. I've got a case going on at the moment, and the landlord has suddenly said that they want to increase their rent from £1,300 a month to £1,600 a month. These are both national health workers, and they really cannot afford to pay that. And they've had to go back to the landlord and say, well, I can't afford it, you know, you've got to do something. So he took £100 off, so now they've got to pay £1,500. But they know in their hearts that they'll get away with that for about a year, and then the next year that rent's going to go up again. And the private housing market is a commodity. A lot of the houses that are on that private housing market are ex-council houses. They're the sort of houses where we would have been putting people in who are not on high wages, but would have been in good subsidised housing. And that's what's gone wrong. We haven't got rent controls in this country like they've got in some other countries. And we need to be arguing with our government, and perhaps the next incoming government, that we need rent controls. There should be some sort of tribunal system or assessment system that would control the level of rent that people are asked to pay, because their wages do not meet that, and by the time they pay that rent, they're struggling a lot of the time to buy the basic necessities of their existence. And that's the terrible, awful situation that people are finding themselves in. People who've got leases now, who bought flats, who are encouraged to buy flats, are getting big bills because they get a proportion of the repairs and maintenance of that flat they bought. And they're struggling and they can't pay. I've got a case at the moment where the people are saying, I just can't pay £20,000, I just haven't got the money. I've had an accident, I've lost my job, I'm unemployed, and yet, because I'm in a leasehold flat, I've been asked to pay £20,000. There's a lot of terrible dilemmas out there for people who are trying to survive. And that's let alone the people who can't get a foot on the housing ladder at all. If you're a single male who's gone through a divorce or something, nobody will entertain you unless you can afford to pay on the private market. And so, in a way, we've turned housing in this country into an absolute commodity. And it means that people just can't make ends meet anymore. And it forces them to live in poverty and to struggle. Or, as we see quite often now, people sleeping in tents on the streets, where, in the past, perhaps we could have housed them. Even when we've been doing developments, we've been arguing, I think with yourselves quite often in the past, about what percentage of those developments should be council or affordable. And we've always gone for about 40%. I've always wanted 80%. And we've had to argue, and we've had opposition to that, where you wanted a much lower figure. So it's interesting to note, and I'll just shut up now, the Horsham doesn't even have any council houses. Tory Council, Horsham, doesn't have any council houses at all. They got rid of them all.
Councillor Mughali.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is in reply to Councillor Hours, and it's about how councillors vote on the planning. Councillor Hours? How we vote, when it comes to planning applications. I just give you an insight on what happens. We take things into consideration, like the concerns about the impact that it would have on the environment, the environmental considerations, violation of regulations, community oppositions, alternative solutions, and conflict of interest. So we just don't sit there and say yes or no when a planning application comes. We've got things to think about. Ultimately, a councillor's decision to vote against the planning application is guided by their assessment of the applicant's merits and potential impacts, as well as their duty to represent the best interest of the community they serve. Thank you.
Councillor Lamb.
I wasn't going to speak on this, but the members opposite seem determined to debate me, particularly with the endless history lessons I feel necessary to correct. I think Councillor Burgess is to be commended for choosing not to buy her council house, thinking about the longer term picture. I'm not sure what she thinks the average age on the council is now, but most of us have never had the opportunity to even be in a council house, never mind have the opportunity to purchase it, due to decisions that were taken in the 80s and which were never really resolved. As someone who was trapped in the private sector in the town for almost 2 decades, I know very much the pain that people feel in the community and the struggle and the uncertainty and the insecurity that you face in those situations. I know very much that the security of tenure provided by a council tenancy would have been something that I would have absolutely loved, but it wasn't an option because those units didn't exist. And the reason why we worked so hard to build those units out is was getting someone into a unit that they can afford, that gives us stable housing conditions for them, is absolutely vital to them being able to move on in life. And the reality is that in 96% of our units, they are still paying 50% of the market price. Actually, it's less than that when you go through all the numbers, because it never really kept pace with what the average market was, and some of those substantially less than 50% of market value. There's always been differences in between the different units due to the ways in which they're calculated. But the point of this is ultimately getting out of the private rented sector is the absolute priority for anyone who's currently trapped in it, and doing things which reduce the total number of units available to people to move out of the private rental sector is not doing a blind bit of good for the people who are currently trapped within that sector. The absolute priority is getting those units built. Affordable rents are not necessarily ideal, but that is what we have to deal with. That is the reality of trying to open up all these sites. The reality, in terms of the trying to get funding from central government, is that without Homes England funding, there'd be no Oakwood coming forward. There'd be no 300 units of social housing at Telford Place coming forward. There'd be half a dozen different schemes in this town that wouldn't have come forward. We would be hundreds of affordable homes lower down right now in our ratings if it wasn't for the fact that we did this. We did it only on the sites where we had to make the scheme viable. It was a choice between some units at affordable rent or no units, and that was the reality. Members opposite are talking an awful lot about social housing in general, but I would point out the petition actually only talks about reducing the rents and taking an awful lot of debt to reduce those rents, not producing a single additional housing. But if you are talking about increasing social housing and affordable housing in Crawley, then I would point out your record on this. Members on this side will remember the local plan debates in 2015. We'll remember how hard we had to fight around trying to keep 40% affordable in the plan. We'll remember that the plan put forward by the members opposite was at 30% of affordable, and how much they told us that it was absolutely impossible to get 40% through. And we have sustained that 40%. That's forced developers to build out an extra 10% of housing as affordable throughout that period of time. I wonder where their feelings on this were then. I think about sites like Goffs Park, which when we proposed that to be council housing, thinking actually decent quality affordable housing is the right of everyone. It's not just the right of people with wealth to live in nice areas. that the members opposite opposed that and said it should be built out as aspirational housing, another council site that would have been lost. I remember when the members opposite fought us against sites like Telford Place, with many of the members opposite voting against that 300 units, including their parliamentary candidate, I would point out, units that will deliver new housing for 300 odd different families in Crawley at prices that they can actually afford in the middle of a housing crisis. And I remember on Kilnwood Vale, when we really wanted to play hardball on the ransom strip into the town, that the members opposite caved over, and so we ended up with about 150 odd units out of 2,500 units being built on our border. Where was this emotional commitment to social housing then? This council, until the government started imposing restrictions through its non-public developmental body on us, we were one of the top 10 performers in the country on new affordable housing. It's only when the government gets involved that we find ourselves getting into problems. And what are they actually proposing? There's not a single actual proposal for any actual changes in it. It just asks us to look again at things and consider things. The rub being that somehow we're deficient in our approach, and that's why we're now in problems, as opposed to the basic reality that we have a housing crisis in this country because we haven't built housing for decades. And that in Crawley, where we're required to pay out the same local housing allowance rate for private housing as we did back in 2010, it simply is impossible to house people on our council housing list. That is the realities that we're living in, and none of that is recognised in this document. It doesn't do a blind bit of good. So I can't look into your hearts and know what you really think or feel. But I know what your actions were when it actually mattered. And I'm very, very happy to sit on this side of the chamber as the side of the chamber that's committed to council housing in this town.
Thank you. Councillor Miller-Smith, do you wish to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. A few things around the motion and that briefly before a few other things. The other side seems to take what is literally a fairly non-political, very sort of open-handed notice of motion, which includes some factual things, such as there's much consternation on the other side about a point, a written question was submitted and answered, which showed that in 2023, only 37 new council homes were delivered, which was lower than in previous years. That's a statement of fact. It's not something overly political, yet you all have your knickers in a twist about that, or anything else in this where you don't like the figures. You have taken something that is meant to be a cross-party gesture and signaling to the public, to the people of this town, and to government and other vested parties that we will continue and want to do all we can to try and resolve these issues. We acknowledge problems. We acknowledge issues around the fact that water neutrality is a problem, okay? And yet you couldn't leave it at our statement, which was, where was this? We've said down below, water neutrality restrictions, which are negatively impacting the delivery of new housing in Crawley, and yet you feel the need to somehow try and put in something, which you've now slightly amended to a more factual thing, that where Natural England sort of sits in the scheme of agencies. You just take very aggressive position against statements which are not aggressive. They are statements of fact. They are things, as with any notice of motion, we are trying to signal intentions, okay? Much like your, the housing emergency notice of motion that this council passed, what is that besides, again, us all committing to what our intentions are? Anyway, we've got what we have in front of us now. I want to just talk about a couple of other points, because the labor side is always so keen to say, where has our passion been about social housing? Blah, 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 blah. I'll tell you where it's been, and I really find it offensive every time you spout this stuff. It was when, under our leadership last, when I was the cabinet member for housing, this council built their first direct housing in decades, okay? It was when I bolstered and some of the people here might remember, the rights of tenants, their voice within this council by having them sit on boards with officers and members, by allowing them a greater say in their homes. All of those things took place under conservative administration of this council and under myself and my colleagues. So when you make stupid statements like, where is our passion? Our passion might be a little bit quieter sometimes than yours because we get it done. We don't just spout off about it all the time, okay? And I did a huge amount of real good work with our tenants to make sure they actually had a voice here, which they did not have under the previous Labor administration before we had taken over. Now, you want to talk about things as well about housing, weights. I tell you, if we have to go back and look, when I was the I keep saying shadow because that's what I meant, when I was the cabinet member and when this administration was in charge and we were under a Labor government, people waited just as long. They waited years still for an A. And in fact, we changed things such as we increased rights around, and looked at colleagues, things like people in the military from town and their rights. What else? It was so long ago now, but we did make real movements for people. And so you need to park it when you want to act like we are soulless or we don't care. Just because we don't stand up and blow our horns at every little thing, we don't politicize everything. We put the people of this town first, and that's what this is supposed to be doing across party. It's a shame you had to
10 seconds,
look after
Councillor.
yourselves.
Thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Crowe, do you wish to use your right to reply? And in doing so, please formally move the agenda, notice of motion 1, supply and affordability of social housing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I think I will comment. And how do I follow Councillor Miller-Smith's speech? Yes, I formally move the motion as I'm required to do. I thank everyone for their contributions. I do think, and particularly Councillor Jones, I don't think he listened to what I said in my speech, quite honestly, with what he said. And there was a couple of other members who also seemed to think that somehow there was something ulterior about this motion, something, some sort of undercurrent, something perhaps a little bit sinister, something just not quite right. But I will go through sort of comments in turn, but I think fundamentally what I've picked up from comments from some members opposite tonight is sort of how dare the Conservatives bring something on social housing to full council? How dare they? That's our domain. Well, actually, it's all our domain and it's all our issues because as we heard at the previous full council when we declared a housing emergency, this is a huge issue for Crawley. There was nothing slanted. Please do read the motion again. And the comment around the 37 properties delivered last year, it does say which was lower than in previous years. The numbers were laid out in a written question from Mr. Burnham at the last full council meeting. The numbers are all there to see. But let's look every year at OSC at how much comes forward. And I was pleased that Councillor Nawaz did sort of rattle off some of the schemes that were coming forward, but I was quite alarmed, and he said it twice, and Councillor Magali picked it up, about members voting, and Councillor Lamb mentioned it, but perhaps not as badly as Councillor Nawaz, about how some members have voted at planning committee. And I'm quite alarmed that Councillor Nawaz is the cabinet member for planning and economic development. If anyone should understand how the planning committee works and how members are supposed to act and vote on that committee, he should be that one. Yet he has said live, well, it's not live because we're recorded again rather than live, but he has said, and it's been recorded twice, accusing Conservative members of almost effectively sort of being predetermined, or maybe he was thinking that they should be predetermined because they didn't support various planning applications. Now, there were some comments reference to and I was really quite disappointed about this, about Kensington and Chelsea and the Grenfell Tower tragedy. Really? Was it really necessary to flag that? The reason why Kensington and Chelsea were mentioned in this motion is because somehow, and I don't know how, but somehow I am told that they have been able to set their rent at 50% of market value. Now, how they do that, I don't know. Why don't we ask them? What is wrong with that? We should ask other councils who've been able to do that as well, whether they're Conservative, Labour or Lib Dem. I don't care who controls them. Let's just be open to learning. Some people spoke constructively. Councillor Lanza did, and Councillor Miller-Smith did as well. And she recited some of the things that happened under the previous Conservative administration. And the word emotion was used. Well, I'm not being emotional about this. You know, Councillor Sumerlin's mentioned that, have we seen the light? Well, actually, it's not about seeing the light. It's about being pragmatic. We know this is a huge issue for this town, and it's potentially going to overwhelm this council with the cost. Why wouldn't we be concerned about that? And Councillor Jones also made some comments about Mr. Burnham, and thinking it odd that I should meet and listen to what he's got to say. Well, I disagree with many things that he's got to say, but I do at least think he's got some integrity about him, and I'm prepared to listen to people who come in good faith and want to raise concerns to me and to others from whatever background or whatever political persuasion they might be. And surely that demonstrates that this motion isn't political. There was no criticism intended of anybody in this motion. It was tabled in absolute good faith. Now, turning to the amendment. Now, personally, I don't have a great deal of issue with quite a bit of what's actually tabled in the amendment. There's quite a bit of it that I'd be quite happy for it to. Okay, but the difficulty I've got is point 3, that clearly politicises something that's not meant to be political. So my recommendation is that we should abstain on the amendment, but we will still be supporting the substantive motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call for a vote on the proposed amendment and the verbal amendment. Agenda notice of motion 1, supply and affordability of social housing as set out on page 11 of the order paper. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Those against? And those abstaining.
So 24, 13 abstentions, and no against.
That's 24, 13 abstentions,
0 against.
and 0 against.
So that amendment is carried.
So the amendment is carried. I now call for a vote on substantive notice of motion 1, supply and affordability of social housing as amended. Is that agreed, or would you like a vote on it? Thank you. The next item is Councillors' question time. We have 30 minutes for this item, and we will start with the written questions submitted by Councillor Hellier as detailed on page 9 in the supplementary agenda, which includes the responses. Councillor Hellier, do you wish to ask a supplementary question? Please do.
Yes, thank you very much. My question is really just in relation to the response, Councillor Mullins, if that's okay. And thank you for your response. I just really wanted to seek clarification that the site is going to remain for use by children, because you actually talk about development of the site in your response.
Thank you. Well, at the moment, we do, as you know, have a nursery on there, so it's already still being used by children, and there's no intention to change that. The problem we got with the site in itself is that it's got limits on development or popularity. We did look, there was an approach by a tennis association for paddle tennis, who they were interested, but they pulled out in the end. If we could get another income on the site, which would give services to the people of that locality, we'd be more than happy to do it. But to say purely that it would be for children is a little bit difficult now, when we've got the concept of the two major centres in Venture Playgrounds in Crawley, plus we want to do something with Waterley as well. So it's not our intention to close Waterley or get rid of it. It's our intention to find a use for it, a useful use that would make it work. Now, if that was some sort of facility where children can join in, and if it's tennis, children can join in that. If it's some activity, sporting activity, children can join in that along with their parents or whatever. So it could be a mixed ability facility. But we're not in a situation really to completely analyse what we want to do, because the site's vacant, it's mothballed at the moment. We want to go forward with it. We want somebody to come forward and give us a suggestion. So I wouldn't want to say we're not going to look at any options as they come along, because that would be rather a naive position to take. So what we would do is consider any proposals that came to us, and obviously we would consult with local councillors as well and local residents. But we want to do something with the site, but at the moment it remains mothballed until we can find an answer.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy.
Question. Can we press our buttons, or is it councillor question time? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for Councillor Atif Nawaz, Cabinet Member for Planning and Economic Development. With the recent news that Marks and Spencer's are the latest shop to leave Crawley Town Centre, how does the current administration score its performance in preventing the loss of high-profile retailers?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it's a sad news for our town. It's tremendously sad announcement and a great loss to the town centre of a store that has been with us here in Crawley for over half a century. And I believe, I can't say that I agree with this decision, but it is one that Marks and Spencer have made based on what they believe will be the most profitable business model for them in the future. So we will work with Employer Crawley to help all those members of staff who do not wish to be transferred to another store, and we will continue to invest in improving the town centre to continue to make it even more attractive place for retailers and businesses to invest in. Generation improvements to the Western Boulevard, the Martlets and the Station Gateway. And while we own very little property, as you're aware, town centre is all owned by private companies, which probably all over, owned by different, hedge funds and pension funds and stuff like that. We will help the owners in any way we can to find a suitable replacement tenant in the current building. There must be some sense of perspective here, however. Some people talk on the social media as if there isn't anything left in the town, but it's simply untrue. I think on the question time, I answered the other day as well, a vacancy rate in Crawley Town Centre is 11%, which is way below the national average. National average is 14%. So we are having a lot of, in the pipeline, regeneration work, Station Gateway, Martless, as I mentioned. So this is really good stuff. And recent data from Town Centre bid, who is quite a successful bid within the town, is our town is actually outperforming the neighbouring towns. So Crawley Town Centre has 15 million visitors last year compared to 10 million Horsham and 5 million Red Hill. So we are actually getting the traction. It's a shame Mark and Spencer is going, but I'm sure other companies moving into the town, like British Holidays and also Varian moving into the town centre, which will attract more businesses and retailers to come and invest in the future. And I'm sure that will be quite satisfying, you know, in terms of what other stuff we're doing in the future to attract more retailers in there. Thank you.
Apologies, as you might have realised, I've opened the floor to Councillors' question time. I do apologise. Due to the number of questions that are wanting to be asked, there will be no supplementary questions. Councillor Chariton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor, sorry. I'm aware that we recently had a visit from the Home Secretary. So my question is to the council leader. I understand also that you wrote to the Home Secretary recently. I can't help but think that perhaps you're a little disappointed that he didn't take the time to come and speak to you about that letter. It would have seemed the kind of gentlemanly or the genteel thing to have done. Do you have any comments on that, particularly in regard to the fact that you also raised it as a borough housing emergency?
Thank you, Councillor Chariton. Yes, it is tremendously disappointing. In fact, I'd go further. I'd say it's extraordinarily insulting to the people of Crawley that in the midst of a housing crisis where councillors have unanimously declared a housing emergency, one of the ministers who is directly accountable for contributing towards the pressures on the borough comes to Crawley on a campaigning visit to make policy announcements on another issue and to promote candidates from his political party standing for forthcoming elections, but fails to engage on what is probably the most serious issue facing the borough currently. That's unacceptable, and in fact it's an egregious act. This was supposedly a ministerial visit, Madam Mayor, yet the council wasn't told, the Safer Crawley Partnership wasn't told, and the only councillor who appears to have been invited to take part with the Home Secretary happens to be the Conservatives' parliamentary candidate. Now, why was it particularly important we spoke to the Home Secretary? The Home Office has still got 3 asylum contingency hotels in the borough, as well as intensifying capacity in 2 of them. Now, regardless of how long they may or may not be located there, this is a further reduction of the nightly paid accommodation available to this council, adding to the shortage of supply, which means that we have to send more people to temporary accommodation out of the borough, and any reduction in supply also inevitably raises the price of the remaining rooms within the borough, something we know has had a significant impact on the council's rising costs this year. Now, we needed the Home Office to exercise more thought over how they're distributing the hotels, and what they're doing is not responsible. And there have been a number of asylum contingency hotels closed in other nearby local authority areas like Mole Valley and Reigate and Banstead. But that in itself isn't particularly responsible unless the Home Office's aim is to concentrate all the pressures in fewer local authority areas like ours. So there would be serious consequences for residents as far as local services and council tax is concerned within the borough if this council is forced through these pressures to declare Section 114 bankruptcy. And unfortunate actions by the Home Office which make this more likely in whatever way cannot be overlooked, and for which we have requested meetings with ministers which have gone completely unanswered, yet he shows up quite happily on another issue. A discussion about this with the Home Secretary, Madam Mayor, might have brought home to him all of these points, which either the Home Office isn't...
It's a pre-prepared speech, a long speech to a verbal question. This is not in the spirit of what question time is meant to be.
Madam Mayor, he's interrupting me unnecessarily. Yeah. No, there isn't. A discussion about this with the Home Secretary, Madam Mayor, might have brought home to him all of these points, which either the Home Office isn't aware of or doesn't care about. And given the secrecy of the visit from the Council, sadly, I'm beginning to suspect it's the latter. But just before I finish, Madam Mayor, after that intervention, Councillor Crowe jumps up again and again to answers he doesn't like to have, to protest about them. Sometimes when you're talking on topic and you're within the time limit, Councillor Crowe, you just have to tolerate the answers that you're hearing. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Magali.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a question for Councillor Mullins, Mr. Mullins, and it's about the deteriorating state of the Leisure Centre K2. I'm not sure when you were last there. However, you probably have not been in the women's showers. The facilities are really bad. The condition is appalling. It is unacceptable that one shower has been out of service since the summer of 2023, another since before Christmas, and a third one just last week. Not to mention the lack of hot water in some of the other showers. They are filthy, and I don't even know when the changing room was last cleaned. The equipment in the gym, there's broken equipment. This is not only an inconvenience, but also a health concern, especially for members engaging in strenuous physical activities. 4 of the machines, as of today, were out of order. The water fountains keep on breaking. The one on the ground floor is also out of order. What specific steps will you take to improve the K2 facilities and services for the benefit of the community? And how are you going to ensure that these improvements are carried out in a timely and cost-effective manner? Thank you.
Well, I've got to say, honestly, I've never been invited into the ladies' showers. But if they want to invite me to go and have a look, I'll be more than happy to.
One of the ladies are in there.
The state, as you know, the cleaning regime and that sort of regime is a responsibility of everyone active. But what you've pointed out to me now, maybe I'm not sure about all of the equipment, but so we need to look at that. I mean, you've listed a few things to me, and I can assure you that I'll take them up. But unless people report things that are wrong, to me, I don't know necessarily that they're wrong. So I do rely on people coming through and saying, look, do you know this has gone wrong? And I say, well, I didn't know it's gone wrong, but I will find out and try and get it fixed. So that's all I can say to you tonight about that, but I will find out and try and get it fixed. You know, the cleanliness of the place should be okay. If it's not, then I'll raise that as well, because cleanliness is very important. It's part of hygiene, and it's very important that we get that up to the right standards. So I will go and talk to the officer concerned, and we will raise it and see what the problems are and where we're going with it, because it's not good enough if that standard's not kept.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a question for the Cabinet Member for Environment, Sustainability and Climate Change, Councillor Noyce. I've noticed a significant improvement in the pathway following my question at the last full council. The pathway which runs from alongside the Snooty Fox Public House to Hazelwick Avenue along the Gatwick Stream. A lot of the rubbish has been cleared from the riverbank, and there is, however, a lot of fencing that needs repairing or replacing, and taking steps. There's a hell of a lot of mud along the footpath, and I've seen in other locations, including the ward I live in, where there's measures taken to mitigate the mud. Can you give me an update of whether you'll be able to do anything about these problems?
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Pritchard. Sam Worsey and Mark Pathett from the patch teams have been out there with their teams, and they've been doing a lot of work, and the pathway's been cleared. The riverbanks were a very difficult area to get to safely, but we've got a waterways team which have been in, and from the stream they've actually cleared that, and that was a very good job. they're aware of the fence and they've assessed this, and we're looking at the options to either repair it or replace it in the not too distant future. The muddy ground, which is a new ask, I agree with that. I went for a walk there very recently, and that's a problem. I think a lot of people probably use that pathway, so it would be good if we could do something down there, so we got some stone shingle or something like that to make it more solid. But I'll, as I say, it's a new question. I'll ask them about that, and I'll update you on that. But before I finish, I'd just like to say what a wonderful job the patch team do all over Crawley, and I'd like to thank them for the great job which they do, and it's ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a genuine question. My question's to the chairman of the Scrutiny Committee Commission, Councillor Ayling. We're now at the towards the end of the council year, and so all the scrutiny meetings have happened. And indeed, we talked a little bit about scrutiny and housing and homelessness in the earlier debate. But one of the key things that scrutiny does is to act as a critical friend to the cabinet and to and seek to add value. So may I ask you what you feel over the last year where the scrutiny committee has most added value to a cabinet decision? Thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting a question on this, but I think that the Overall Scrutiny Commission adds value across all parts of the council, and we do a good job of scrutinising things that come through the committee. We've done the homeless, and we've done sorry, yeah, we've done parking, and we've done things on sorry, I'm nervous. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm nervous, and I've been up since 2 o'clock. I can come back to you, Councillor Crowe, on other items that we've scrutinised.
Okay. So accidentally, I do apologise. Right, okay, sorry, thank you. I've got a question for Councillor Irving with regard to housing. At the last full council, I did ask that he confirm the veracity of the consultation process with regard to the Bristol Close proposals, and it's clear from the outcome that was absolutely the case, and that we are a listening council. As we go forward in the battle against the housing emergency, which absolutely hasn't been of the making of this council, I would ask for his reflections on how we balance the ward interests and the borough-wide needs, and also how we continue to make sure that local residents, where there is a possibility of a development, are clear about proposals that are put forward. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, thank you, Councillor Russell, for your question. Very good question. How long have I got? First of all, as regards consultation, I mean, I am keen on consultation, but of course consultation can never be a veto. It's something you have to take into account in everything else. Regarding the Bristol Close consultation, we could have taken the decision and said, well, actually, we've had a consultation, but we'll take it to the planning committee and see what the planning committee have got to say about it. But I took the view that doing that would prolong it, and having looked at what the local people, the responses from local people, I could see what the majority of them were getting at. I mean, it looks like a viable site, but I think that the comments that people made were realistic, and I thought that in the long run, there's probably, well, the benefit we would get, that we would not get a lot out of it. Having said that, of course, Councillor Ross was right. He's a ward councillor, he represents his residents. I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing. I have to look at what's best for the town as a whole. And of course, it is difficult because we're virtually built up to our boundaries. There's not a huge amount of sites in Crawley that haven't yet been allocated. So we're having to look around for sites to be developed, and inevitably that is going to cause conflict sometimes with people who already live there, who don't want new housing built near to them. So it's very difficult. We just have to keep on doing it, trying to bring people with us. And I have to say, not every local resident was opposed to that development. So we will look at that. We will obviously take away any learnings that we can from that, and seek to apply them in the future.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the Cabinet Member of Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Nawaz. The Coin Square fountains were out of action for 4 summers and costed just over £175,000 to repair, which is almost 1/3 of the original cost when we paid £554,000 for the installation. My question is, what more could the council have done to protect Crawley residents' money spent on this work? For example, through some insurance policy, or are we in process to get some of the money originally we paid to original contractors, i.e. to some warranty or something?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Ali. First of all, I think we are given this answer before as well. It's now residents' money we spent on that. It's all grant funding which we spent on, and the repair has come from that grant funding as well. And I agree with you on that in terms of having the legal framework in place. We did try to do that, but it was quite complicated. So we had 2 options. One option is follow that route and don't get this in action, which is quite high in demand. As you know, when we opened that on 16th, it was quite a busy, and it was really like a festival kind of thing. And it was quite cold, and we talked about it earlier, and the kids were all over, enjoying the water massively. So it was quite a success on the day one. And we had the option to either continue with the legal battle and go the complex route, or do something right for our residents and provide them and do something good for the town centre to attract more visitors. So we took the second route, and we have now in place a equipment which is now covered, and the contractors are protecting it for the future if anything goes wrong, but hopefully nothing will go wrong. That's my hope. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is to Councillor Chris Mullins. Can we have an update for the councillors on the feed-in opportunities that are coming at Tilgate Nature Centre, as it would be nice for me to be able to take my grandchildren. Thank you.
Marion, I'd love you to take your grandchildren, and there are opportunities, will be opportunities. The Nature Centre, as it is a very fast developing and exciting centre with lots of new and interesting animals in there, especially some of the rare species that we're working to protect, and some of the exchange systems we've got with other zoos or centres as well. The sort of animals that are going to be in the Feed the Animals thing are, I just can't try to remember. There's armadillo, porcupine, capybara, tapir, several lemurs, meerkats. Now, I've got to tell you this is a bit of exciting news. We've just imported from the very highlands of Scotland some wild cats. Now, I'm not sure if you'll understand their meows when they make them because the accent's going to be very Scottish. But they got their own sort of meow, but they're another exciting creature that we're getting in. We're getting in a new manager coming 15th of April, and he's got a great deal of experience, and so we're hoping to build on that and to sort of perhaps get and expand the choice for people when they go to visit the centre. So it's a wonderful opportunity. Marion, do go. Do enjoy it. Get your town discount as well if you can. You know, if you go on My Crawley, you know, you can, if you live in Crawley, get a discount for going there. Don't forget that. And go and enjoy it. And I hope everybody else goes on the beautiful summer that's coming, the lovely sunny days. It'll be wonderful to walk around there, maybe take on feeding the animals or just purely looking at them and admiring them and seeing them for what they are. I'm so proud of that centre. It's wonderful. And we're going to improve it. It's going to get better. It's going to get more exciting. And I'm looking forward to meeting the new manager and talking over some of his thoughts and his visions to see where we can go with it. So I think, yeah, do it. I mean, enjoy yourself.
Watch out for the porcupines.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to Leader, I think, but it might be to Councillor Nawaz. So if you want to decide between you, I refer to a specific press release, 11020, issued on the 19th of February. Views sought on first phase of major town centre regeneration scheme, the Station Gateway. This is a project that Crawley Borough Council leads on. But the question, although it refers to that press release, has wider implications. When you look at the top of that press release, it emphasises the town centre regeneration programme, and only very much later does it give a small reference to the Crawley growth programme. And to the casual reader, it could look as though the Station Gateway is entirely a Crawley Borough Council undertaking in terms of resources and financing. And would either the Leader or the Cabinet member agree with me that it's really important from the point of view of transparency that our press releases give credit to partner organisations, especially those within the Crawley Growth Programme, of which this scheme is a part, and which would include the Project Centre, the former Coaster Capital Local Enterprise Partnership, London Gatwick Airport, West Sussex County Council, Metro Bus, and indeed the UK government. Would you acknowledge and take care that appropriate credit, or if you like, reference, is made to partner organisations rather than giving the impression that is a Crawley Borough Council doing everything on its own, which cannot be the case, not least because of our budgetary position?
I'll answer this, Madam Mayor, because I think it's more about communications than it is about the actual consultation. I can absolutely assure Councillor Lanza that there's no intention to understate any of our partners' involvement in any of the worthy projects and regeneration programme that's going on. And I'd be mightily surprised if that draft of that press release hadn't passed by the West Sussex County Council press office at a very minimum, although I will have a word with our comms team and just check that when we have these things. Clearly, and he will remember this very clearly himself, we've had no shortage of projects where there's been a joint joint activity, and as a result we've all joined in. He probably can cast his mind back to last week where I was sitting in a road digger and he was standing underneath it with me. We won't be churlish. We're very, very pleased with the things that have happened the Eastern Gateway. If West Sussex County Council I think the local government term is to get its finger out and sort out the estate of the old library area as well. We'd love to work in partnership with the County Council and sort out the regeneration there as well. But certainly no intention to downplay anyone's involvement in the great work that's going on to make this borough an even better place to live.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Sivaraja. And this will be the last one.
Thank you. This is a question for Councillor Jasmine Khan. Can I ask the Cabinet member if spiking is a serious problem in Crawley following the Home Secretary's announcement? And if not, do you know why he chose to make the announcement here? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, the Home Secretary's visit seems like it was largely linked to the Clear Hold Bill project, which is the Home Office initiative. I'm really surprised because me being the Cabinet member and being the chair of Safer Crawley Partnership, I wasn't invited because we have been rated as, we've got a green rating because we've done really well because Crawley Borough Council engagement with wider partners has given us the green rating, so I think we've done really well compared to other areas. I am puzzled that why did it visit Crawley? Because we don't really have a spiking problem, because his visit coincided with the spiking intensification week. We have had few incidents in Crawley, and when those have been reported, we have worked closely with the police and the licensing team. We worked with the premises, and we have guided them and reassured them, and we told them to increase the vigilance and to make sure of anti-spiking resources. Under the Safer Crawley and the Safer Streets, we did a specific work where we provided these premises with anti-spiking lids. There were 4 lids and some resources. We provided them with safety information, purchased some spikies, they're called, anti-spiking bungees, which are for bottled drinks, and some foil top lids, which are put on any drinking vessel like cans, bottles, and glasses to keep people safe. So compared to other areas, we don't really have a problem, and we're quite happy. We don't want to have a problem. Thank you.
So that concludes Councillors' question time. Thank you. Sorry? Yeah, if you follow it up in writing, Councillor. Okay, thank you. I call upon the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Kiran Khan, to move receipt of the reports of the meetings as set out in agenda item 6 on page 23 and in the associated supplementary agenda.
Hi. Here's the mic on, yes. So I move that the reports of the Governance Committee, the Planning Committee, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, the Audit Committee and the Cabinet Committee be received. Is that agreed?
Thank you. There are no further items for debate, and as there are also no further supplementary items of business, I declare the meeting of the Council now closed. I would also like to wish good luck to those councillors standing for election in May, and very best wishes to those who are retiring and this is their last meeting. I would also like to invite my fellow councillors for some refreshments in the members' area. The meeting is closed. Thank you.